Does Donald Trump want to destroy the European Union? Well, it certainly sounds like it. A new report making the rounds on social media, first published by an outlet called Defense One, claims that a longer, unreleased version of the U.S. national security strategy lays out a radical shift in Washington's approach to Europe. The unpublished strategy circulated before the White House released its official version last week. Details three core priorities for America: competition with China, a withdrawal from Europe's security, and a new focus on the Western Hemisphere. But it goes much further than that. The report states that the Trump administration wants to, quote, make Europe great again. And how does he plan to do so? Well, by pulling certain like-minded, presumably right-wing governments of Europe away from the European Union. Specifically, Austria, Hungary, Italy, and Poland are named. The strategy argues that Europe faces civilizational erasure due to immigration and supposed restrictions on free speech. It proposes that the United States support parties, movements, and cultural figures in Europe who promote traditional European ways of life just as long as they remain pro-American. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from the American security strategy was this. The publicly released NSS document criticizes a perpetually expanding NATO. The longer version, however, goes much deeper, calling on European NATO members to wean themselves off the US military support. Already, remember, some of the government of these states, like Hungary, for example, are widely known for their anti-EU stance and rhetoric. In fact, just today, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán accused officials in the European Union of systematically raping the law by planning to strip member states of veto powers over frozen Russian assets. The European Commission is due to vote on Friday on a plan to invoke Article 122 of the EU treaties, an emergency clause that allows decisions to pass by qualified majority instead of requiring unanimous approval. Now, this measure would let the bloc immobilize frozen Russian sovereign assets indefinitely and use the profits or interest to support Ukraine, even if some member states object to it. Taking to social media platform X, Viktor Orbán wrote, and I quote him, "With today's procedure, the Brazilians are abolishing the requirement of unanimity with a single stroke of the pen, which is clearly unlawful. The rule of law in the European Union comes to an end, and Europe's leaders are placing themselves above the rules instead of safeguarding compliance with the EU treaties. The European Commission is systematically raping European law." Not just on the topic of Russian assets, the Hungarian Prime Minister has, remember, often clashed with Brussels over the migration policy, rule of law, LGBTQ rights, and support for Ukraine, positioning himself as a defender of the Christian Europe against perceived Brussels overreach, liberalism, and Western influence. In fact, he's even used vetoes to block EU decisions and accused the bloc of trying to undermine his government. He has called the European Union a war project rather than a peace project, and is known for promoting a vision for a reformed EU led by what he calls patriots, focused on national interests. But largely, Europe's security strategy is currently fragmented, with the policies of the Trump administration accelerating a divergence in transatlantic threat perceptions. The Trump administration's Europe policy, remember, has only further highlighted the internal divisions within the bloc. And now, after the story about the longer leaked strategy document was published by Defense One, the White House has denied the existence of any version of the national security strategy other than the one published publicly last week and which was signed by President Trump. Now, WION cannot independently verify the authenticity of the Defense One report. Until this document is verified, these claims remain just that, claims. But what is clear, however, is that the official national security strategy signals a shift in America's global priorities. How far that shift goes is still uncertain.